All right, so get ready. We're diving deep into Pi Network today and tackling those PiCoin price predictions for 2025. I'm sure you know the basics already, though, right? Pi Network wants to make crypto mining easy, you know, using your smartphone. But here's the thing. It uses this thing called the Stellar Consensus Protocol. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, it's actually pretty interesting. So unlike Bitcoin, with its proof of work, Pi's SCP, it relies on trusted nodes, like,
Yeah.
a network of them. So think of it like they vouch for each other, they build up reputations by consistently validating transactions and securing the network. And the more trustworthy a node is, well, the more influence it has.
Okay, so it's kind of this decentralized system,
Right.
like checks and balances, but powered by the community. Pretty cool concept. But
Yeah.
this leads to the big question, right? How's this going to affect the price when it hits the open market?
Yeah, and that's what we're here to unpack. And to do that, we got to consider a few things. Let's start with the mainnet launch. Pi is operating on an enclosed mainnet, like a closed ecosystem. Transactions happen internally, and the coin isn't traded on major exchanges.
So it's like a beta before the big launch,
Yeah.
like a global launch. What happens when it transitions to an open mainnet?
That's when things could get interesting for, Pi enthusiasts. An open mainnet means PiCoin interacts with the wider crypto world. It opens the door for listings on exchanges like, Binance or Coinbase, exposing it to a lot more investors. We've seen this before with other cryptocurrencies, and it can really impact the price.
Yeah, so that's why everyone's talking about these listings. More demand,
Yeah.
probably a higher price. But there's already a huge community, right? Over 50 million users. That's got to play a role too, right?
Absolutely. User adoption and a vibrant ecosystem. Those are crucial. If all those users start trading, using it for transactions,
Right.
participating, that real world activity would help a lot.
So the more people believe in it and
Mhm.
actually use it, the more valuable it is. But I'm curious, how does Pi Network control the supply? Like Bitcoin has that limited supply, and that's part of why it's so valuable.
Yeah, you're talking about tokenomics. Pi Network hasn't fully explained how that'll work yet, but they have ways to control it and influence the price. Think like lockup periods, where early miners got to hold on to their coins so they can't just flood the market, or staking rewards where you get more Pi for holding it.
So they can incentivize people to hold Pi and prevent those crazy price swings. That makes sense. But even with the community and tokenomics, there's got to be something else too, right? The whole crypto market.
Exactly. Pi Network doesn't exist on its own. What Bitcoin and other altcoins do will affect it. Remember that bull run back in 21? That helped a lot of cryptos.
So if the whole market is doing well, Pi will too. But what if things take a downturn? A crypto winter, is that bad news for Pi coin?
Not necessarily. A bear market makes investors cautious. But strong projects with fundamentals, well, they usually do okay. It all depends on how well Pi shows it's valuable, its utility, its resilience as a platform. And that leads us to
Yeah,
regulations.
those regulations. Governments are still trying to figure out this whole crypto thing. How could that impact Pi?
It's a double-edged sword. Stricter regulations could hurt growth, by limiting how accessible Pi is or stifling innovation. But clear, favorable regulations could help too. They could attract bigger investors, bringing in money and legitimacy.
So regulations could make or break it. That's a lot to think about. But before we go too far, let's look at some examples of how this all works. Exchanges, community, tokenomics.
Yeah, let's rewind a bit. See if history can give us some clues about Pi. Like, remember Solana back in 2021? So remember how we talked about exchange listings and how those can affect price? Well, Solana back in 21 is a great example. Before getting listed on, the big ones like Coinbase, Binance, Solana was trading around like $30. But then those listings went live and boom, it went way up, reached over $260.
Whoa, that's a huge jump, almost 9 times higher. That really shows how those listings can bring in new investors.
Yeah.
But let's talk about community engagement. We talked about Dogecoin before. Was that all just memes? Or was there something more?
Dogecoin, it's an interesting one. It started as a joke, yeah, but it built this like
Yeah.
really passionate community. They loved it, use it for tips, donations, even organized events. The price surges were from hype at first, but that community, they kept Dogecoin relevant.
So it starts with the memes, maybe.
But it's the community that keeps it going. Speaking of real-world use, what about tokenomics? Can you give us an example of how that affects price? Sure. Let's look at Bitcoin, the original. Bitcoin has a fixed supply. 21 million coins, that's it. And that scarcity plus the demand over the years, that's been a big reason why the price went up. It's like a collectible. The fewer there are, the more valuable they become.
Right, that makes sense. So Pi Network could use that same idea
Yeah,
through its tokenomics.
exactly. They can control how many coins are released or use things like token burns, manage the supply and demand, and that could make the price go up. Now, going back to those price predictions, the bearish, moderate, and bullish scenarios for 2025. Let's look at those in more detail.
Okay, let's start with bearish. That's where Pi Network has some problems, right? Maybe it doesn't get listed on big exchanges.
Yeah.
Or there are regulations. Or maybe it doesn't really have any uses. You said it could be 10 cents to $1. Why so low?
Well, without those big exchanges, it's harder to trade Pi.
Mm.
And if people aren't sure if it'll last
Mhm.
or what it can be used for, there won't be much demand. And the price won't move much.
So it's like it has potential, but it doesn't really prove itself. Okay, what about moderate? Pi launches on the open mainnet, gets on those exchanges, and people start using it. You said $1 to $10. What would cause that?
Being on exchanges makes it easier to buy and sell. New investors come in, and if it's actually being used, well, people are more positive about it, and that can push the price up.
All right, sounds good. Now, the bullish one. This is where Pi Network becomes like a real platform. Developers are building on it, big investors are involved, and everyone's using it. You said $10, $100, even more. What would it take to get that high?
A lot of things would have to go right. Pi would have to be a really good platform with lots of apps and developers, and both regular people and big institutions would have to invest. They'd have to believe Pi is the future.
Wow, that's a big vision. You mentioned Ethereum before. It started with smart contracts, but now it's used for so much. Finance, NFTs, gaming. Could Pi do the same?
That's the question, isn't it? If Pi can do even a little of what Ethereum has done, there's so much potential. But remember, there are a lot of unknowns. Predicting crypto is tough. There are just too many things that can happen. But having said that,
This is what makes this whole thing so interesting, though, right? Like, we're seeing this tech revolution happen right now, and who knows? Maybe Pi will be one of those stories, one of the big ones. But let's step back a sec. We've talked about price, the tech stuff, market stuff. But what about, like, the bigger picture? What if Pi Network actually works? Could that change the whole crypto world?
yeah, that's where it gets really interesting. Pi wants to make crypto easy for everyone, you know? It's a big goal. Think about it. The first people who used crypto, they were into tech or wanted different investments. Pi wants to bring crypto to everyone, even people who don't have bank accounts, people who don't really get blockchain.
So it's about giving people more control, especially in places where it's hard to get financial services. That's a big goal. But how would that even work?
Imagine anyone with a phone can be part of the global economy, send money, receive money easily, access things they couldn't before. It could be huge. But it could also change things a lot. For banks and, the way things are now, we're just starting to see what could happen.
It's crazy to think about, but what about the environment? Bitcoin uses so much energy, right? Does Pi Network fix that?
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the best things about Pi. Remember how that Stellar Consensus Protocol works? It uses trust instead of tons of computing power. It's way more sustainable. Better for the environment, for sure.
That's like choosing the better option. But let's be honest, some people don't trust Pi Network. They say it's a scam or a pyramid scheme, just another fad. How do we, figure out what's real?
It's good to be skeptical,
Okay.
especially with crypto. But you got to think critically. Look at all sides. Remember, people doubted Bitcoin too at first.
And look at it now. So what should our listeners watch out for to make good decisions about Pi?
A few things. First, that open mainnet launch. That's a big step. It shows they can actually do it. Second, those exchange listings, getting on good exchanges. That'll help a lot. More people can trade it, and it looks more legitimate.
Okay, and what else?
Real-world use. Will stores take Pi? Will people build things on the Pi network? That's how we'll know if it's more than just hype.
Right, it has to actually be useful.
And lastly, keep an eye on regulations. What governments do will be important for Pi. And for all of crypto, really. It's complicated, and things are always changing.
So much potential, but so much uncertainty. What do you think? What's the future of Pi Network? Is it just a fad? Or could it really change things?
That's the question, isn't it? We'll have to wait and see. But one thing's for sure, Pi has gotten people talking. It's different. It's made people think. And it shows that innovation can come from anywhere.
That's why we do these deep dives. It's not always about the answers. It's about exploring, learning, asking the right questions.
Yeah, exactly. So to our listeners, keep learning about Pi. See how things develop. Make up your own minds. Crypto is full of surprises. Maybe you'll be part of the next big thing.
That's a great point. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.